he's going to get his pants taken off. Well, what Randy said was basically this. What I had to tell you tonight is something that you better listen good to, real good, because it affects everything that happens in civil government in this nation. But it also does something else. It also explains why the non-statutory abatement that principally Randy Lee and others developed, I was involved primarily. My involvement was just sitting at the typewriter, banging away and banging away and banging away, and Randy said, no, John, make that italicized right there, or you want to bold this section right here where it says thirdly and everything. I said, sure thing. And I'm sitting there beating away and typing all the notes, and like when we did the non-statutory abatement handbook, there's an appendix in there, in Appendix A in the back of the Book of the Hundreds. And it's called The Nature of Emergency Powers and Martial Rule. Randy and I wrote that in about 4 days. And there's 102 footnotes in there. And somebody asked me one time, why so many footnotes? And I said, well, I told Randy when we started writing that essay that it was to provide some kind of background and logical structure as to the present system of government, to explain what it is and how it came to be, and why it's essential that we start jural societies based on God's law and the common law and maxims of law, and also why we as individuals must learn again the old ways, as it says in Scripture, and why we as American people must learn how to do the common law process correctly when it really is common law process. There's a lot out there that styles itself as common law process, but in fact isn't. And based on my experience that Randy mentioned before at the Chalcedon Foundation, Dr. R.J. Rushton would always tell me, he says, John, an essay is no good without plenty of substantial footnotes, because he says modern man is incapable of it. So the real research in that essay goes to Randy Lee, because he and the other guys, there's about a dozen of us in California and the West and elsewhere, who are accepting and digesting a logical argument. He wants some authority to show him that this doesn't rely on the writer's opinion, it relies on excellent authority. Well, I was satisfied with just using biblical verses, but Dr. Rushton, he said, the only thing that works and gets their attention is to bury them in footnotes. Well, when we wrote this essay in the back of the American Jural Society handbook, I happened to mention this to Randy Lee, and for the next 4 days, that's what he proceeded to do. And in my mom's bedroom there, a spare bedroom in my mom's place, it looked like a snowstorm hit the place, because there was little stacks of paper all over the place and on top of the computer, and oftentimes under the keyboard hanging out where I could type in a quote, and then there was in the window, he had pieces stuck in the window and everything else. And for 4 days, while I typed, Randy sit there and buried me in footnotes. So the real research in that essay goes to Randy Lee, because he and the other guys, there's about a dozen of us in California and the West and elsewhere, who are kind of an informal think tank in the common law. We criticize each other's works and things of that nature. Randy Lee is one of those rare men that's not afraid to put his money where his mouth is. And he's a man's man, and he's a ladies' man, except that he doesn't have time for the ladies now. He's so busy touring with me and trying to keep me in one piece long enough to do another session. But Randy's done the principal research, and he was the first man, by the way, to prove the nom de guerre argument in an actual situation, in an appearance in United States District Court on an IRS order to show cause. And by this one little act, and no one had ever done this before, so we didn't have any precedents for it. We didn't have any authority for it. Randy was simply trying to test the theory of the case that we had insofar as how we mount an effective defense. And so he had been studying about the nom de guerre and a few other things, although we didn't have a lot of sites for it at that time. And he had this appearance coming up in United States District Court on this order to show cause from the IRS. And so he goes down to court, and he takes his briefcase with him, and he had a few goodies in it. And he walks in and sits down in court, and eventually the clerk calls his case, and Randy stands up and goes forward, you know, and he says, "May I speak, Your Honor?" And the judge said, "Yes, you may." And the judge is messing with paperwork on his desk and not really paying much attention to Randy. You know, he's just another victim coming in there to get fleeced, right? So, or sliced and diced. They have a lot of different ways they like to do it now for variety's sake. Anyway, the judge is messing with his paperwork, and the U.S. attorney is sitting over there with his coat pulled back and his feet stretched out like, wow, this poor dumb sucker. He's going to get his pants taken off. Well, what Randy said was basically this.